So now that we have our footage imported into Premiere, we are now able to edit. And the idea of editing is taking clips, looking at them first, and then putting them into the timeline. So let's talk about a very basic and simple process here. We're going to go over to any folder that we have media in. I'm going to go to my footage bin here, and I have a couple of clips. The first thing I'm going to look at is the information that is associated with these clips. As you can see, if I hover over the clip, this yellow box appears and it tells me a lot of information. It says the name of the file, the pixel aspect ratio, the length of the file, the frame rate, the audio rate, the bit depth, and if the audio is stereo or mono. That's a lot of information in this yellow box. Now, if you want to see this information in a bigger window, we can do that right in this window here. If you go up to this area and you press on the right button, if you right mouse click or control click, you can undock the panel. I find this handy if you want to do stuff like expanding your view. So I'm going to bring this whole window up. Click on the bottom right hand corner, expand it out, and now you can see that we have a lot of information here. We have frame rate again, we have the media duration, we have the video info, again the pixel aspect ratio, the audio info, and you can see that these numbers are different. So I said earlier we're going to match the lowest pixel aspect ratio, and that's because I don't want to magnify, I don't want to scale this one up if I'm matching the bigger one. So I'm going to be building my sequences based off of the information of this clip right here. To bring your panel back into this area, you just click on the tab and drag it back over, and you can see that it turns into a kind of a purplish blue rectangle in the background, and let go, and then it pops right back in. So I wanted to show this information because we need to set up a sequence based off of the clip settings. Earlier on, when we had opened up Premiere and started a new project, we had canceled out of sequence settings window. The reason being is because we can set it when we're inside of Premiere after the fact. And that's a unique feature to Premiere. So if I have a clip here and I want to make a new sequence out of it, I'll right click on it and I'll choose New Sequence from Clip. Click on that. You'll see that a new sequence is created here. You can see the icon is different. And you can also see in the timeline here that the clip that I chose to make a sequence from was placed inside of this sequence. Now, I haven't set an in point or out point. I haven't set a duration. I don't know what part of the clip that I want to use, so I'm going to delete this clip. This may seem a little strange. What we have done is set the sequence settings based off of the clip. And that's key. Once that's locked in, we don't have to do that anymore. So I'm going to click on this clip in the timeline, and I'm going to press delete on the keyboard. And there we go. We have a nice clean sequence. I highly recommend renaming this sequence. As you can see, it retains the name of the clip that it was based off of. I like to call my sequences by date. So 13, 12, 15. Let's see, year 2013, 12th month, 15th day, and I'll just call this one test sequence. Now my test sequence is inside of a footage bin. That doesn't make too much sense to me, so I'm going to right click here and create a new bin. And I'm going to call this one SEQ, short for sequence, and I'll just drag this into there. Now things are organized in the right place. If you prefer more of a tile view, down here you can click on this and then you can see tiles here. And it's easy to open these up. When you double click, it'll open up a new window with the footage inside, and you can see a picture, a still frame from that footage. Same thing with the image gallery that I have, and also the sequence. Sequences always have this icon. They won't put a picture. Alright, I'm going to switch back to list view. So the hardest part is done. Settings are set for our sequence based off of the clip with the desired settings. So there's a method for editing, and I recommend following this at first to help you learn the proper skills for editing. So we have 4 windows in Adobe Premiere. If we double click any kind of media, it will load it up into this source monitor here. So I'm going to double click this clip right here, and it loads it up into here, and you can see it says source. In the source monitor, we have a time code that tells us the playhead position. We can click and drag around and analyze our footage. We go backwards. It's very simple. We also have a play button here, so we can press play and watch the footage. We can press stop. We can step back 1 frame, step back multiple frames. We can step forward multiple frames. Besides clicking on these buttons, you can also take advantage of J, which is rewind, K, which is pause, and L, which is forward. Now, the more you hit L, the faster it will go. And the same goes for J. If I hit J twice, it'll rewind quickly. If I hit it more times, it goes faster and faster. You get the idea. Spacebar is going to be your best friend because that's a play pause button. So spacebar, play, spacebar, stop. So the reason why we have clips load up into the source monitor is so we can find a good starting point, also known as an in point, and find a good ending point, also known as an out point. Let's say that at the beginning of this clip, the interviewee is looking at the camera and we didn't want that, so we want to cut off that part. And we're going to move it to a part where he starts to speak. So let's say this is going to be the beginning of my clip. Well, down here we have a set in point button. Now we can click on this and you'll see that a blue line will appear to the right of our playhead. We'll play through our clip. We'll find a good spot for where to stop. Let's say that right around here before he looks at the camera, and then we can set an out point. Now we have from the blue area, from this in point to this out point, this is going to be the media that we're going to be editing into this is going to be the section that we're going to edit into our sequence, also known as the timeline. So we have another button down here. This one's called Insert, and this one's called Overwrite. I'll demonstrate the difference between these a little later, but first I'm just going to use this Insert button. If I click this Insert button, we will have the footage from the in point to the out point be placed into the sequence based off of where the playhead currently is in the sequence. And you can see our playhead is here, the yellow guy with the red line. And it's actually at the sequence start, so that's a good place to put it. I'm going to click Insert, and there you go, it's down there. Of course, there's another way to bring our clip down. Instead of just clicking on the Insert button, we can click on the picture and drag it into our timeline. And there you go. So it depends on what you want to do. I'm going to delete this clip so I don't have a duplicate. When you insert or overwrite any clip from the source into the timeline, the playhead will automatically plant itself at the end of that clip. And the reason for that is because we can take a new clip. I'll double click this one. I'll find a good spot to edit from up here. I'll mark my in. I don't know if you saw earlier, but you can just hit I instead of clicking these buttons. So I'm going to do that right now. Hit I for in, and you'll see the blue line appears again. I'll move my playhead to another area, and I'll press O for out. You can see the shortcut here. Mark out is O. I'll click O, and now we have this section here. And I'm just going to click the Insert button, and there we got it. Perfect down there. And you can see the playhead plants itself at the end of the clip. This is a very streamlined way of editing, and this is highly recommended. So now that we have a couple of clips in our sequence, it's a good idea to take a look at how our sequence flows just by bringing our playhead back to the beginning, pressing play, and watching it on the program monitor over here. So this program monitor acts as a visual representation of what's inside the timeline. So let's talk about the toolbar that we have access to inside of Premiere. Just like in Photoshop, we have a selection tool. With the selection tool, we can take any clip or media that we want, take it and move it around to any part inside the timeline. So you can see that we have created a blank space here. You can move it over, you can move it up, and so on and so forth. The selection tool is a very powerful tool. You can also do a couple more things with it. So in your timeline, if you go to the end of any kind of clip, you'll see that the arrow will turn red. If I click on the clip, I can now trim the clip. This is cutting the clip. And up in my program monitor, you'll see that it's rolling back the time code a little bit based off of my actions. Or I can extend the clip to go longer than I had originally intended. And you'll see that the time code extends a little bit more too. So it's a very powerful tool. If I go to the left side of this clip and I trim, I'll be creating a blank space here. So that leads me to my next tool. Let's say I wanted to trim, but I didn't want to create a blank space. So rather, I wanted to trim like this, and then I wanted to move the clip over. Well, there's a tool to do all that for you. You do not have to trim and then move the clip over. What we're going to use is something called the Ripple Edit tool. If you click on this one here, it's called the Ripple Edit tool. We can do the same action, but you can see that the arrow is now yellow. It's not red. So I'm going to trim this clip back a little bit, and what's going to happen is an automatic ripple edit. So I cut the clip and it moved over automatically, and that's what the Ripple Edit tool does. So likewise, if I wanted to lengthen the clip, this is a little more confusing looking, but it's the same thing. So I can click on it and drag it to the left, and I can keep going. You can see that the time code underneath in that little yellow information box keeps rolling. So I can extend the beginning of this clip's cut point and then let go, and you see that it automatically shifts it over. You can do that for any clip in the timeline. Let's say I want to do this one here. I can extend the length of the clip, and it won't be blocking over this one. And I can shorten it, and it brings this, it keeps it glued to it. So it's a very handy tool. Now, a cousin of the Ripple Edit tool is the Roll Edit tool, or the Rolling Edit tool as Premiere calls it. If you click on this one, we can change the cut point, but it won't change the length of the entire 2 sequence duration. So I'll click on this and you'll see we have a red arrow like we did with the trim tool, but this time around we have 2 red arrows pointing left and pointing right. I'll click on the cut point and I'll shift it over and take a look at the entire duration of our clip. It will stay exactly in the same spot. So this is handy if you don't want to mess up the latter part of your sequence. So this is moving the cut point, and if you look up in my program monitor, you can see that it gives us a rolling duration of what we're taking away from one and adding to another. Very handy tool. Alright, only a few more tools I want to talk about that are basic one. This razor blade tool here, if you click on it, it allows you to go in and make cuts anywhere you click. This can be handy if you find a section that you don't want. You can activate the selection tool, click on the section you don't want, and press delete. Now if you hit delete, we're going to be stuck with a blank spot. So a little trick for you, I'm going to undo that. Click on that clip, hold Option, and hit delete, and you'll do a ripple delete. So that'll delete the clip and also roll back or ripple back the next clip to butt up against the previous one. It's pretty handy. Alright, the next one I want to talk about is the hand tool. The hand tool is the same tool that you use inside of Photoshop, which allows you to move to different parts of the sequence. Now in Photoshop, you're moving to different parts of the image if you zoomed in a lot and you wanted to find a specific area to focus on, you could just drag the image around. In this case, it's a sequence that we're dragging around. To better understand this, I'm going to zoom into this sequence. You can zoom into the sequence by using this little bar down here. This bar has two boxes on either side. If you click on one of the boxes and you drag it left, it will zoom in horizontally. So if I'm zoomed in horizontally and I have my hand tool activated, I could just click on the timeline and move my sequences down. I'm not moving my footage, I'm moving the entire sequence itself. Another handy tool I want to talk about is the zoom tool. This works just like this: click and zoom, click and zoom. You can also do a marquee. If I wanted to marquee zoom from, say, 4 seconds to 8 seconds, I just click here, make a marquee, and boom, I now have my from 4 seconds to 8 second zoom inside of my sequence. Very easy. All right, if you hold Option and you have the zoom tool activated, you can see that the zoom tool will turn into a minus instead of a plus. You can click, 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 and you can zoom out. So those are the basic tools that we're going to be using to start out with. We're going to get into a couple more later on, but that's all you really need for now, just to do some basic editing.